One of my favorite places, the Palouse, behind me today. Have
Never
you
been.
been? Well, you can't go because now that's what it looks like. So now you've
Yeah.
been ruined. You can never do honest work, although yours wouldn't have any color in it.
Well, it's too popular too. It's becoming, one of those photographers must-see sites.
Yeah. Not
So,
becoming, it is.
oh
It,
yeah.
yeah, it's overrun with obnoxious photographers who are ruining it for the rest of us, which is a
Uh,
PSA for you folks listening. Please, and I mean this sincerely, can you be a considerate, kind photographer when you're in other places? You don't go into farmers' fields when you're in the Palouse. That's how they make their living, and that's how we get kicked out of places. Or I just saw another thing on Instagram where somebody said there's actually a place in New Hampshire or Vermont, one of those two. It's like the premier place for fall photography. And the township just put a notice that that road is going to be closed from whatever, September 15th to
wow.
October 15th. No traffic whatsoever. Why? Because idiot photographers thought that they had the privilege to do whatever they wanted to on other people's personal
Mhm.
property. So could you please not do that? Just be respectful and let's be good citizens in the photography world so we don't get kicked out of places. Okay, with that, today's thought is has to do with this idea of what's the future of fine art photography. And I think you and Brooks Jensen, I think you were telling me, the editor of Lenswork, had a brief discussion about that based on a podcast. I think he
Yeah, he did
posted.
one recording that I don't know when he recorded it, but he published it the other day. It was called Disposable Flippant Artwork. And he was talking about how photography, now that everybody is a photographer, at least we have the equipment and the potential
Yeah.
of being one. It's just changing. And the view was that people are losing the appreciation of photography as a form of self-expression. And it's
Interesting.
just becoming picture taking. And, Brooks talked about how the average time people spend on Facebook is 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I was telling my wife the other day, I read an article about a woman. She recounted how she used to sit on her grandmother's lap, and the grandmother would pull out this family photo album that covered several generations in a single album.
Yeah.
She then thought ahead, what would it be like when her granddaughter wants to sit with her on her lap and review the family photos? And she's got 10,000 from the year 2023 and another 20,000 from the year 2024.
Yeah.
And the little girl says to grandma, "What's this a picture of?" And she goes, "Oh, that's a meal I had in October of 2023."
At McDonald's.
Yeah, at McDonald's. So the question was, what's the future of fine art photography? Photography that is a form of self-expression. Um, and Brooks' outlook was bleak.
Really?
And I was talking with him about how I go to photo clubs and
Mhm.
the average age is about 85.
Yeah.
The clubs are getting older. We're
Yes.
not seeing the new younger kids come in. Now that may be they seem to be less inclined to join clubs like
I
we
would
did in the
agree.
past. So maybe that's some of it. But he's talked about when he sees classes teaching photography and the emphasis is on Photoshop techniques. So maybe we can put our face on the Mona Lisa, goofy
Mhm.
stuff, not teaching it as an art.
Art form.
And so we were discussing, and I was asking, what can we do about it? And I had a couple of ideas. But really, what I want to do today is get others to maybe chime in with ideas. How can we promote to the younger generations fine art photography so it doesn't become, as rare as film photography is? So here
That's
are my
great.
two ideas for Brooks. The first, whenever I talk to people, I ask them this question. I say, "Tell me your photo story." And
Huh.
it almost always is, "I took a class in high school," and they fell in love. Life caught up with them. And then as they got older, they got more time and disposable income, and they returned to a true love, photography. And so I thought, this is where we hook kids in high school in photography classes. But if Brooks is right, and the majority of the emphasis is on selfies and food photography and Photoshop goofy techniques and weird filters, how do we promote fine art photography in the high schools?
Hmm.
And I had two ideas. The first, I speak to my local high school class, usually once a year, on photography is fine art.
Hmm.
So maybe we could somehow get a program going. I don't know who we are or how we organize it, where we encourage people to speak to their local high schools, not about Photoshop and not about cameras, but
Yeah.
about photography as art. And the other I suggested to Brooks, and he didn't run with it, so I'm not sure he's thrilled about it. But if someone like Lenswork could create a 20-minute program, put it online, and make it available, somehow we reached all these high school photography instructors and said, hey, here's this little 20-minute module your kids might enjoy. And it promoted photography as an art. That might be another way. But I'd love to hear other people's ideas. How do we reach younger kids? They don't seem to be inclined to join clubs, and certainly not clubs with the average age of 85.
Yeah. Well, and the clubs they join are online, they're chats, they're text groups, they're all that, right? They're not inclined to go out and be, you're right, part of a club. You know, what you and I are doing, and I don't know how we do this other than your idea to go into the schools, but you and I love doing lectures. We do them for clubs all the time, and we welcome the opportunity primarily because you and I never talk about how we do stuff. I refuse to do presentations anymore, very candidly, that have to do with techniques and Photoshop or even multiple exposure techniques and that stuff, right? I want to talk about, dare I say, fine art photography. I want to talk about how we show up as human beings and slather ourselves all over our work so that it's our work and all those things that we like to talk about. So, you know, maybe what we're doing here is encouraging those listeners, and then hopefully they'll share with others, to be more involved in your local high schools. Go and have a conversation about and show what fine art looks like, and in your images, and maybe in this case other people's imagery that you love, and say this is a possibility, but it has nothing to do with your Photoshop skills. I mean, yeah, that might come into play, but we want to get you thinking. So it would be interesting. Comment below thoughts that you have as listeners today. What can we do? Is there somebody out there who's willing to make that 20-minute video if Brooks is not? And then how do we get that to be a possible resource that can be used for free in the high schools around the country, where they can show it as in one of their classes? Say, yeah, we're talking about photography here, but here's another possibility. You can have self-expression in photography, and that's a different thing. And here's what that might look like.
There's a lot of kids who I have to believe were like me at the age 16, 17, where I didn't have any musical abilities. I didn't have any writing abilities. I couldn't write poetry. I couldn't paint. I just really felt fairly uncreative. And photography was a way that I felt that it was a good match for me.
Yep.
A way to be creative, and yet it also had a little technical element. I think that appealed to me. Brooks makes the point that when we were in high school, they had the dark room, and that was a huge hook. Kids really got hooked. And with more and more photography programs ditching their dark rooms, how do we replace that with something else? But I think there's kids out there who want to be creative, and this might be for them if we could just expose them to it.
Yeah. Well, good thoughts.
Let's hear people's ideas. We need ideas.
Yeah, we need ideas, because you're right. Otherwise, we're just going to be preaching at these clubs to 65 and older. Right.
And we're all dying off. And again, what's the future of fine art photography? It's not really looking very good.
Yeah. Oh, good. So we hope you like our photography and you keep following us, though. Right. I mean,
that's the most important thing. Yes. The most important thing.
Well, because if you don't get likes, Cole, you get grumpy.
I check the likes every day on our YouTube thing. And if we got less than like 50 or 100, I'm pretty depressed. I can't sleep.
I know.
I'm turning to drugs. I mean, you could ruin my life if you don't like this video.
Yeah. So please run out and like it 50 times in a row. Even if one person clicks it 50 times, that's fine.
I don't care. I just want to see the numbers, John.
Yeah. You're a numbers guy. You told me that. That's right. Hey, we appreciate you following along. Thanks, folks. We'll talk to you next time.
Goodbye.